And first, I want to read the Second Amendment. It says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I like to read it occasionally so we all get reminded about the simple language that they use. It's not so simple, though, is it? So,
No, it's been interpreted by the courts to be one of a personal defense. It's a personal right as opposed to a governmental right. Those are, Justice Stevens always had the idea that this was just for a state militia, which the Supreme Court and lower courts have disagreed with that uniformly because of the personal right to be able to protect oneself, not just in your home, as Heller said, but out on the street. And, being in public, making sure that you can have that right to protect you is an equalizer based upon the physical prowess of one person over another. You may be 5'1", you may face a person, 3 or 4 people that are 6'5", 6'6". You all of a sudden have the ability to equalize the odds there and being able to protect yourself.
I just saw a big story about a lot of women now carrying, to equalize, because of course women are victimized more than men.
That's the biggest growing demographic that I read in gun ownership is women owning guns and women learning how to shoot, which it is an empowering thing, and it's an empowering thing for them to have that ability to equalize things.
In this segment, I always like to talk about people that you've helped. Okay, so somebody out there listening, they can see themselves and say, that's the guy I got to call. So talk a little bit about the kind of gun cases that you might see, that if someone has this issue, they can contact you.
They're really kind of all across the board. I mean, you've got everything from someone who may have a gun that either they are licensed to carry or they have a FOID card, they're within their home, and it's a question of whether or not they were within the bounds of the law, versus someone who actually was involved in an active shooting, either in the home or out in the street. And those things become, much more complicated when we were talking about during the break, the variables that you have that are included in it. So it seems like it's really straightforward of A shot B, but when you get into these sort of things, you have to deal with things like self-defense. How do you end up proving self-defense as a defendant? First the state has to prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Then you have to, the burden shifts to you to show that either you used one of 3 things, that a forcible felony was occurring, and, sex, violence, treason. If anybody gets a treason case out there, please, I will do it for free. As much as we hate the state of Illinois sometimes, I will do a treason case for free.
We're always looking for that interesting case.
I'm looking for those interesting cases. I agree with you.
We're looking for the Third Amendment case, too. So
if anybody's quartering troops in your house, please call me. That's the next guest that's going to come on. So, or if you're defending somebody else, your grandmother's being beaten up in the Jewel parking lot, and you use your weapon to end up shooting and killing someone then, or defense of yourself, where you have a reasonable fear of death or bodily harm, you're allowed to use deadly force. It's reasonable to the subjective person or to the objective person. So, in other words, when you look out on another, is that person who's sitting at home right now listening to this, are they going to take the facts into consideration and go, yeah, that person had a reasonable expectation of or fear of death or great bodily harm, therefore they were justified? And the unfortunate thing is what we see occasionally is juries are made up by people that watch CSI or they watch the movies where the guy has got to be hanging off the cliff by his fingernails and he's about to flip off and die before he can end up using deadly force, which just simply isn't the law. If you are in fear, we had a case over here in Arlington Heights where a guy was swinging a chainsaw, and he was swinging a chainsaw at somebody else. He's in a parking lot. Do you end up having the ability? Are you in fear of death or great bodily harm? Well, if you're standing 100 yards away, the answer is no. But if you're as close to me to you, Steve, maybe 3 or 4 feet, the answer is clearly yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you lose a limb? Could you lose your eye? Could you end up being harmed for this? Yeah, you can. So are you justified in that? The answer is clearly yes in that situation, but it varies, and that's the more important thing about people's cases, is every fact situation is going to be different.
It's to me, when we were speaking beforehand, I always look. I love doing these kind of interviews because I always learn so much. Yeah. And we were speaking before the show. We were talking about this, and we were about how important it is that if you're going to be a concealed carry holder, right, that there's a responsibility there, and that you should take take that responsibility to heart, right?
It is an incredible responsibility. And, when people come and they take concealed carry classes, they think, oh, The guy that wants to just carry a gun, or the woman who wants to just carry a gun and they want to show it off as a piece of jewelry, or they want to be the cowboy, that's not the person that should be concealed carry. And it's not good for that person. It's not good for society as a whole, because you're going to end up hurting yourself or someone else.
I think you made a great point when we were talking about to be very particular in the person that trains you.
Yeah, and that's a really big deal.
Point. That's a great point. I want to touch on this because this is brilliant. This is brilliant.
You know, anybody who carries a weapon or anybody who's shot a weapon has been to the gun range, and you've seen the guy who's the hyper-masculine guy who drives the pickup truck that's really too high, and he carries 4 weapons on him at any time, and he's, claims to be a cop, but he wasn't a cop. He claims to be in Special Forces, but he wasn't in Special Forces.
He's drinking Monster.
Exactly.
And he's what's up, boy?
He's just jacked up, and he wants to show how much of a man he is. That's not the guy you want training you. Mm-hmm. And it's not the guy you want training you, because that's not who you want testifying for you if they call that person as an expert.
And that's what I wanted to get to. So, because you have to kind of think in advance, right? Because that's going to happen, isn't it?
You want the guy who's stable. You want the guy who's legitimate, who's been in law enforcement, who's been in military. And I'm talking about real military, not the diesel mechanic who decides to become an instructor. You want somebody who has a background as a marksman or infantry, or somebody who's done this kind of training and has been in actual combat, who can testify and wrap themselves in the American flag and say, look, I won this award and this award and this award for valor. This guy, Steve, can shoot. Steve can shoot because I've ended up pulling the target, and the target said sum of 7, and he hit 3 and 7 within the space of half a second. I know he made a good judgment call. I've seen this happen personally.
Wow, and I just want to, that is so important, and I never thought about that. Again,
I haven't thought about it either,
Every time again, when I do these shows, it's like I get this aha moment, and that's this one. It's like, wow, you got to think about that in advance. We don't want to go to court. Right, we don't want to be questioned, but inevitably, if we're training for that, that may happen, and that's what's going to happen. You're going to have somebody testify.
And Steve, generally, what will happen is these guys charge more than the other guys. That's something that has never ceased to amaze me with gun owners, that they will end up spending $2,100 on a pistol, but they won't end up paying for good training. They'll find the cheapest training they can find. They'll find the cheapest way to get around this. They won't buy private insurance for themselves if they get involved in a shooting. They won't retain an attorney to make sure that attorney's there. They will call their second cousin's sister's brother to end up coming in, who does real estate law on the side from his environmental law practice. He has no idea how to handle these kind of cases. He never has. So, but they'll hire him because that person will do it for free or do it for some, this less than what somebody else would charge. You get what you pay for.
Well, I agree with that 100%. And I think when your freedom's at stake, and of course that's what's happening here.
Right.
Money shouldn't be the object. Right?
Yeah, and it shouldn't be after the fact, after something's happened. You should already have a relationship with that attorney so that you know who the person is. You've already vetted them. He knows you. You know them. And if you don't, shame on you, because that's the most important frame of time during that investigation.
Well, that's what we're doing here, though.
Yeah.
We're putting you in front of our listeners here at AM 560.
Our Second Amendment people.
Our Second Amendment people, and you're saying, hey, this is the attorney you need to know.
But again, I think, you got to think this through, right? You don't just go out, run out and get a concealed carry. Think it through. Why are you doing it? And then what will happen if you use that if you... For some
a myriad of issues can
exactly,
arise,
and of course you're putting yourself, by getting a concealed carry, you're putting yourself in that position where that's gonna, it may happen.
Attorney Thomas Glasgow, we're running out of time. Can we get your phone number if we want to get in touch with you? Have any questions about the conceal and carry?
847-577-8700, or you can Google me, Thomas Glasgow, Glasgow. Or you can look at us on YouTube, same thing. It's GLaw US. It's YouTube /GLaw US. Or you can find us on Facebook under Glasgow and Olson, GLASGOW OLSSON.